Hi, my name is Dawn Schofield, and I recently published a book on my paranormal experiences, and I'd like to tell you one of those experiences right now. Back in the early 2000s, I had just broken up with a boyfriend and had moved back in with my parents to my childhood home, which was very haunted. And I planned to be there a few weeks till I got myself together and got a new place. And one morning I woke up about 5 a.m. It was a little bit before it got light outside, and I decided to go downstairs, get myself ready, and go for a walk around the block before I had to go to work. So I got up, went downstairs and into the kitchen, and above the sink in the kitchen is a little fluorescent light. It gives off just enough light to see what you're doing in the kitchen. So it was enough light for me to sit down and put my sneakers on. So I sat down at the chair, which was at the end of a long rectangular wooden table that we had. And I was sitting there putting my socks on when all of a sudden I heard a sound like metal sliding against wood. And I looked up just in time to see my dad's pocket watch sliding down the wooden kitchen table at me at a very high rate of speed. And I thought, oh, it's going to hit me. But instead of hitting me, it stopped immediately at the end of the table. It stopped dead as if somebody had stopped it with their hand. So I was really shocked, and I sat there for about 20 seconds waiting for something else to happen. Nothing else did happen. So I thought, okay, do I go and tell my parents, or what should I do? But I thought, what am I going to tell them? That Dad's pocket watch slid towards me and now nothing else is going on. So I was like, no, that's dumb. So because nothing else had happened, I decided to finish putting my shoes on, and I went out for a walk. Now, my dad's pocket watch was nothing special. He had recently bought it at like Walmart or Kmart, one of those stores, and it was made out of some kind of cheap heavy metal, probably from China. It had a pretty like hunting scene on the outside of it, but it was, it wasn't a family heirloom or anything. So I don't think it was chosen to send me a message or anything like that. But it was an interesting story, and nothing ever happened to me like that again. And nothing indeed had ever happened to my parents or my brother in the house. And over the years, I've tried to think about like what it could possibly be. Now, some of you might have heard of something called poltergeist activity. And poltergeist in German means noisy ghost. People think of it as like a spirit of some kind that throws things around, maybe even scratches people. That's one idea of what poltergeist activity is. A lot of people have other ideas. Some people even say that poltergeist activity doesn't exist. It's just always faked, which I don't believe that. But one aspect of poltergeist-like activity that I believe happened to me is something called psychokinesis. And psychokinesis is the ability of someone to affect the physical world with just their mind. And some people try to do this on purpose. Like they will use their mind's power to try and move something, or try to do something, try to affect something with their mind. But it also happens to some people unwittingly. It also happens, it's something they can't control in certain situations. And this tends to happen with people with chaotic hormones or chaotic emotions, or both. It's said that sometimes this happens a lot with teenagers. Some of you may have heard of poltergeist stories, like supposedly true stories in the news. And a lot of times this happens around teenage girls. So that's a theory. And as I said, it can also happen around people with chaotic emotions. And that day, I probably had all of the negative emotions that you could possibly think of. And I might have been just about as upset that day as any day in my entire life. I wasn't a teenager, but you could certainly say my emotions were totally chaotic. And I think what could have happened is I had this burst of psychokinetic energy that somehow made the pocket watch slide down the table at me. Therefore, I don't think this thing happening was a message to me. I think it was just a strange manifestation of my chaotic emotions. Do I know that for sure? No, but I've considered all the options over the years. We lived with spirits in our house over the years, and none of them moved anything. I think that might have been beyond the scope of spirits to do, in my opinion. So therefore, I've settled on psychokinesis, but it was a really interesting thing that happened to me, and I was happy to be able to tell you about it. My new book is out, as I mentioned, and in a second, I'm going to put the information on my book and my website on the next screen, and I hope you'll take a look. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you stay spooky.